So, hey, hi. Thanks for joining, Mr. Shahzad, the head of partnerships at Shardeum. So, I'm really glad to have you on our show. So, we have this Web3 Wisdom Podcast where we talk to some of the brilliant minds in the space. So, just to give you a glimpse of the previous episodes, we have had the pleasure of having Mr. Yatsiyu, the chairman of Animoca Brands, Ms. Sandy Carter from Unstoppable Domains, Mr. Paul from Cointelegraph, and there you are. We have Mr. Shashad, the head of partnerships at Shardeum, and glad to have you, sir. How are
My
you?
pleasure, Praveen. First of all, thank you very much for including me in the company of people you mentioned. So that's a privilege and an honor. The second thing, I wanted to congratulate you on a successful launch, which you've done, Blitzcranch. We're very excited to see, another project coming out of India doing extremely well, and looking forward to support and collaborate with you in any manner or form. So once again, congratulations are of the order.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. It's yeah, it was interesting times, challenging times at Blitzcrunch, and I'm glad. I'm super proud of the team. Guys back in India, back in Germany, we have colleagues sitting in South Korea and Belgium. So credits to everybody who have kept their head cool through the launch. We have successfully launched, and what it's been a month since the launch, and we are going strong from strength to strength. So yeah, I mean we are here to know more about you and Shardium today, and that's the reason for having you. Maybe we can take the bit crunch conversations to later point.
Sure.
So how did you stumble into Web3, Shashad? What was the hook for you to come into Web3?
So, like things in the last few years, COVID has displaced and changed lives of a lot of people. And
Uh-huh.
thankfully for me, I landed up in Web3. And this was partly just because of coincidence. Umar
Hmm.
Sayed, who's one of the co founders of Shardeum, invited
Hmm.
me to the project which he was building. It is Shardeus, which is basically the underlying protocol layer on which Shardeum was built. So I joined him in August of 2020 in the midst of COVID. And from then on, started pushing forth. He basically got me as the head of business development and operations. So I started pushing forward. And very soon we started seeing some traction. We started seeing growth until October 21st of 2021. I was doing a presentation and I had sent out an email to the 500 plus people whom we had in our list, and
Hmm.
one of them was Nischal Shetty. So he
Hmm.
attended the show, and 3 days later we got a call from him that he wanted to talk to us and he was looking for his next big assignment
Hmm.
after Wazirex. And that's how Shardeum was born. We launched Shardeum on February 2nd of 2022,
Hmm.
and it's been slightly over a year. It's been a
Hmm.
phenomenal journey, and something I really cherish.
Cool.
So,
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Everybody can see the numbers. Everybody can see the metrics, the traction, and the ballparks, right? So, what exactly is Chardium? And could you please simplify that to a layman, probably? Yeah.
sure, absolutely. So basically, we are building a layer one blockchain. A
Hmm.
layer one blockchain would, if you were to think of it, you would immediately think of the likes of an Ethereum, right? Who's been one of the longest blockchains in the industry, having
Hmm.
built in 2014, 2015 timeline. So we basically were looking at building something which is on the lines of an Ethereum,
Hmm.
except taking some of the issues which Ethereum faces on a regular basis and resolving the problems
Hmm.
which it has. So Omar basically he was in the space since 2010. He got into blockchain at that time. He saw some of the existing problems and which he saw would come into play as the community grew, as the demand grew, and as the number of users grew. So he started writing an algorithm which took care of one of the biggest issues which Ethereum today faces, and that is scalability. So the biggest problem we have is Ethereum cannot scale more than 15
Hmm.
transactions per second. Now they have tried various methods. They're still working on various options, and maybe they will come out with the resolution to that. But one of the ways of doing it is to build a ground up solution on another platform and take it forth.
Mhm.
So we at Shardeum are trying to do exactly that. We are building it ground up and resolving
Mhm.
scalability and
Mhm.
transactions per second and speed, which I think is going to be critical when we start onboarding the hundreds and millions of users. And that's what our
Mhm.
goal is. We want to build a network which is
Mhm.
accessible globally, which
Mhm.
has very low transaction fee,
Mhm.
has fixed fees. So you're not dealing with the bidding process, which you start seeing. So just one of the transactions I did last week, I paid something like $38 on a single transaction.
Yeah.
And so big prices are back with the, the bull market. But
Bullish back.
that's right. So we are trying to resolve that particular issue where we offer the ability of people to spend as low as 1 cent per transaction.
Oh.
That becomes extremely important in emerging markets in the emerging world.
Mhm.
So places like
Mhm.
India, places like Vietnam,
Mhm.
places like Africa,
Mhm.
where people want to work on blockchain
Mhm.
and want to do
Mhm.
transactions, but have a
Mhm.
lot of difficulty because of the price.
Mhm. Cool. I mean, it's definitely a challenging task and an uphill task that you have taken up, and from the progress that I have seen so far, you guys are doing an impeccable job, right? I mean, to in the world of so many L2s and L3s and whatnot, to go and to do what Ethereum did, but in a cost-effective way is something that is brilliant. And when you said, just going back to the previous question here, when you said you stumbled upon Web3 just by coincidence, what were you doing before? What was your previous work experience? Where were you working? And where are you currently residing? Maybe you can also share
Sure.
where you are dialing it from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I started my career with a small company out of India called HCL.
Okay.
At that time, HCL was a very small entity. And I spent a
Uh-huh.
couple of years in their business unit called NIIT. That was
Uh-huh.
where I started. And then we decided to move out of India. I joined
Mhm.
Lockheed Martin a few years later.
Mhm.
Spent about 11 years with Lockheed in various roles, primarily
Mhm.
being a director within the company, where I was responsible for
Mhm.
IT services. So I've managed large
Mhm.
scale projects which range from
Mhm.
building things which I was involved with, as well as managing teams as large as 180 people globally.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
spent time with that. At the same time, my wife was building her own startup, which was in the education
Mhm.
sphere. She has a master's in education, and the goal was to build a school. So
Mhm.
in 2000, we bought our first school and started working in Dallas. So that is where I'm based out of. I live in Dallas.
Mhm.
And from one, we went to five. Things were great. I was more or less on
Mhm.
cruise control. And 2020, COVID came
Mhm.
along. Umar's
Mhm.
daughter and my daughter grew up in school together. So I've known Umar
Oh,
for a very long time. And
okay.
he wanted to get me involved one way or the other into the blockchain
Mhm.
space. So he kept, talking about it. Eventually, this opportunity did come about,
Mhm.
and I joined. So
Mhm.
thankfully, Shardeum is a baby of two very, very
Mhm.
sophisticated people in this space. One of
Mhm.
them being Nishal Shetty, who,
Mhm.
obviously you know him because of Azirex and
Mhm.
what he did,
Mhm.
uh,
Mhm.
in the Indian crypto space. And Omar,
Mhm.
who has built several large-scale projects,
Mhm.
including at places like Zynga, where he was involved in the Farmville project, and
Mhm.
Yahoo, where he was incorporating Soundcast, which was supposed to be a
Mhm.
precursor to YouTube.
Mhm.
And he's picked up several patents on the way. He was also involved in the Mars rover project with NASA.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
his focus has always been trying to build
Mhm.
something which is
Mhm.
scalable. And I
Mhm.
think this is an extremely good alliance of two people,
Uh,
coming together.
I mean, definitely. I didn't know this fact that your child and Omar's child did schooling together back in Dallas. That's a nice info. That I'm not sure a lot of Shardium community knows. So thanks for sharing such a personal insight as well in this pod. And when you say Shardium, I mean I've seen. Um, a massive community, right? Shardeum, in fact, has one of the biggest communities in terms of growth, community growth. I would say Shardeum is among the top two, top three of all times. So, what sort of projects are trying to build on Shardeum? That's my first question. And what advice would you give a founder? Let's say if I'm a founder, if I'm starting up something new, I would want to explore a chain. What advice would you give to a founder who could build on top of Shardium?
That's a very, very good question. I typically meet between 6 to 10 projects on a weekly basis when they, call
Mm,
upon me and brainstorm some of the ideas. The first thing I
mm,
tell them is make sure that you're able to monetize what you're building. So
mm,
there has to be
mm,
revenue at the end of it
mm,
all. If it's not revenue driven, then it's just
mm,
a dream. So what
mm,
happens is most people come in, then they have this fantastic idea, but at the end of the tunnel, I mean, there is no money to be made. So how do you
mm,
sustain something like this? How do you make it grow, and how do you scale it? So these are the questions I typically ask. The second thing is that even if you're building a me too, so if you're looking at
mm,
an existing project and you try to copy, replicate, or do a sort of a hero worship on that project and build on,
mm,
I would say look at some differential, because what is critical
mm,
is you have to be
mm,
different. You cannot
mm.
just copy something and say I'm better. It doesn't work.
Yep,
So you have to
yep.
have your USPs, you have to have your differential points, and you have to have something which is separates and segregates you from the project which is already live. So that is
Mm,
another aspect of it. Third thing I advise is don't spend too much money when you're trying to build. Bootstrap the whole thing.
mm,
Raise
mm,
money, but raise is something. Look at it as a loan which is being given to you by VCs. It's not money for you to
mm,
burn and splurge. So, which is why
mm,
Shardeum is also very conservative when we do our spend. We
mm,
haven't had these huge booths, so we haven't had these huge sponsorships, but we've been building the project before we go live. So that's been
mm,
something I advise these projects to go on.
mm, mm. Yeah, I mean, everybody can absolutely see that, right? I mean, a lot of companies, especially in the bull, people go after booths at conferences. I mean, no offense to projects who does that, but rather, even I would spend a huge chunk of money on building, especially at the early stages, right? I mean, if you are a Google, if you are an Amazon, or if you are an established project, let's say in crypto terms, if you are a Bitcoin, if you are Ethereum, you can afford such spendings. But spending too early, I would say, especially spending in the first year of the project, in the second year of the project, is something that I would also advise the founders to do, and rightly pointed out. So, I mean, when you were talking about the child factor with Omar, that's a personal connection that you revealed here. Do you have something else to reveal that you haven't shared in any other podcast or any other interviews before?
Not really. I think that is probably something which I haven't spoken in public and which I did. But the other thing is that I come from a
Mhm.
background which is from the movie dome. My dad used to own
Oh,
theaters in India,
ah,
and we had also a film distribution business. So projects like
mm,
NFT and these things are very dear to me. So that's
ah,
something which it comes naturally because I've seen
oh,
a lot of that during my childhood, and I used to be one of the most popular kids in school because of the ticket passes. So
okay, okay, yeah. I mean, I can imagine people running behind you for tickets, sort of bribing you. I can imagine that whole scenario. Good, good, good. And obviously, I mean, talking about the community, back to the topic again. So Shardium has one of the biggest communities. What has been the secret of success, if I may ask? Because there are a lot of companies out there who are trying to crack the partnerships thing and the community thing in general, but very few are able to crack it, right? Very few are able to bring organic traction, right? So what is the essence of it? Because I keep seeing posts, keep seeing workshops that were conducted by Shardium across country like India, right, and beyond India. I've seen workshops in Africa, in Vietnam, in Philippines. What's the secret of essence for this, Shashad?
it's very simple, Vijay. I think what we basically have done something. It's not unique, but it's the way we have
Uh-huh.
executed on that. So Nishchal came up with this idea called proof of community, where he said that let's
Uh-huh.
start looking at building,
Hmm.
communities at a grassroots level. Let's
Hmm.
not just talk about Shardium, but let's talk about blockchain. Let's talk about Web3. Let's talk about the growth in this industry and how we
Hmm.
could involve the common developer, the average person onto the community.
Hmm.
So we
Hmm.
started hosting these events. We started with India. I mean, India primarily because we are India centric for two reasons. One is,
Hmm.
we have most of our developers, quite a few of them, a large team in India. And
Hmm.
both of the co-founders and myself are all born in India. So we decided to start there and said we'll do, work here first and then take it, globally. So we started holding these small events where we estimated probably between 30 to 50 people in a university campus outlet or at a coffee shop or at a workspace area, where we would get them and talk about blockchain, talk about Web3, and it started with that. We started seeing that from the 30s and 40s, we started getting 100 to 150 people show up, and that started snowballing into. We started getting invites from various university campuses, from various hackathon groups, from various individuals who wanted to be hosts, and then we started self-propelling it, where anybody who has a campus, who has a place where you want to host this, we will support you. We will have somebody on the ground who can come and talk, as well as invite somebody. Now we have a much larger group, so get people involved where they could come and share their thoughts and processes, how they've made it to where they've made it, and that started snowballing. So having said that, that started snowballing into places like Africa, where we started seeing traction in Nigeria, and we have done events there at 20 plus centers. Then I visited Japan and Korea, and while during the visit, I snowballed those events there. And just yesterday we had another event in Japan, and last week we had in Korea, and there's another one coming up in the next week or so. So this started traction. We also started doing it in Vietnam, and eventually, since we have a team based in the US, we started working on the US segment. So we did one at the Stanford University. We have one being offered through Howard, and all that is started to snowball. So we'll see a lot more traction here. With that, we also started something very different. We said, let's do a backpack tour, and let's go to universities. So let's make a list of 60 universities plus, and have a couple of people go from place to place and talk about blockchain. And that gave us enormous amount of traction, and that we started seeing again. Now there's demand for when is the next backpack tour coming up. So that's something which we have seen, and that's been extremely effective. But it was a great idea to begin with. Then we started implementing it. The execution again, the team in India has been phenomenal. Also the team globally, and the Shardeum community at large. I mean, everybody steps up and helps. So that is something which is just phenomenal.
I mean, impressive numbers, impressive stats, and one thing that you forgot to mention is you were doing all these in the bear market, right?
Yes.
Anyone could do this in the bull. Anyone could throw parties, throw workshops or whatever in the bull, where they can attract more audience. But when there was scarcity, when there was no retail, that's when you educated people. I would call it this way, right? Rather than having meetups as a term, you sort of educated the community well, and I would. I'm really happy to know Shardeum, to know the history, to know the connections between all these facts, and just best wishes from Team Bitscrunch and myself, and keep going, right? And
Yes.
if you could do 1,000 plus events in bear, I'm really excited for what's to come in the bull. So best
So
wishes
we
on
are
that.
we are very excited. We also have launched Shardeum University now, which is where we are offering free courses, online, and we started with a couple, and then you'll see a lot more being added on. So I think that's again, education remains key. I think education is something which you can do even in the bear or the bull market, and as long as you work something out which is cost effective, then that is very sustainable. I think those are key things to work around.
Good. So Alpha Net, Beta Net, and is the main net going to be the next one? Any
Yes.
alphas that you can drop?
The question, I just came back from DAS in London, the Digital Asset Symposium, and that was a question which I had at every meeting when mainnet. So Vijay, a couple of things. What you mentioned is earlier is that what we're trying to resolve and what we're trying to build has never been done before. I mean, this is sharding as total as the main build for a layer one has not been done successfully yet. So what the problem we're trying to resolve is not easy, and which is why we have taken so much of time as we've taken to launch mainnet. Having said that, we are almost there. So
Mm-hmm.
we are at a point where the beta net has been up and about for about a year.
Mm-hmm.
And right now we're just erasing the kinks and removing all the bugs. We are just in the midst of a security audit. We've
Mm-hmm.
had the first phase being completed. Now we're getting on to phase two of
Mm-hmm.
that. So we should have all those reports coming. We're
Mm-hmm.
also launching a bug bounty, which will be open to developers globally to do
Mm-hmm.
some white hacking and tell us, what we need to fix before we get to mainnet. So these are two initiatives which we have ongoing. We also will be launching an incentivized testnet.
Mm-hmm.
So that should be coming up in the next few weeks. Look forward to that. There are going to be airdrops on that, and we have all the details on our website on what and who can
Mm-hmm.
and how you can participate in our
Mm-hmm.
incentivized testnet. So these are very exciting times. I mean, we expect the numbers to be way through the roof. When we launched our testnet, we started with 150 nodes from the project itself from Shardeum. We expected
Mm-hmm.
to be at about 1,500
Mm-hmm.
by the end of a week. Surprise, surprise, we were at 37,000. So, which I'm told is the highest number for any layer one. So again, for an incentivized testnet, we are expecting some, very, very good numbers, very,
Oh,
uh,
oh.
gigantic numbers. So
Mm-hmm.
again, thanking the community for all their dedication, their support, and their patience. I
Mm-hmm.
think the community has been extremely patient with us and
Mm-hmm.
working with us through as we, go through these final stages. But mainnet is definitely planned towards the middle to the half of the year, somewhere around there. Right?
Ah,
Being
okay.
software for this long, we
Mm-hmm.
always know it's always a moving target, right? But
Okay. Okay.
we're definitely shooting to do that late Q3, late Q2, early Q3. So that's what we're
Okay.
focusing on.
Okay. So there you go. That's the alpha, around half of the year, which is not so far. We are almost finishing this quarter in a week. This is the last week before Easter. So yeah, in 3 months you can expect something big from Shadium. So thanks for sharing the alpha. So what next? What next in terms of, let's say, community growth? I mean, community is already massive. Events, initiatives. You talk about university, Shadium University, and workshops, initiatives. What next? What are the other alphas that you can share on the community side? What can a community expect? Let's say if I am a layman sitting in Munich, right? I'm in Munich, Germany. How can I be part of the community and what can I expect going forward?
So, I think community building will still remain something paramount. We are coming to a
Mm-hmm,
point where we are going to see a multi-layer, multi-blockchain world.
mm-hmm,
Interoperability will become key, and again, you will
mm-hmm,
have projects which will, be on several networks as we move forward. So, community is will be something which will be critical, and that will drive, the usership as well as the volume. I mean, your
mm-hmm,
TVL will obviously depending on how much your community is and where your community lies geographically, as well as what your community is all about. The projects. So those things will become very, very critical. Anybody can partake in Shardeum. We are a permissionless
mm-hmm,
network, a proof of stake. So we are actually working towards a one-click implementation for anybody who wants to run a node. We have several of our providers who will be available on shardium.org to have a look at and choose. And I would recommend run the nodes, especially in the
mm-hmm,
incentivized testnet. There are bounties to be given. So make sure
mm-hmm,
you're part of that. That is one thing. From the other point of view is for builders, I would recommend you to look at projects which are of real value to keep building, and some of the things which will continue to be dominant in the Web3 space are DeFi. I think DeFi is going to
mm-hmm,
come back and be huge again. It's always been there, but now we're going to see a lot of new things happening in that space. I see gaming
mm-hmm,
becoming very big, and for Shardeum, gaming is a very important sector segment as well because of the speed of the transaction and the low cost. Because the average user doesn't want to be bothered with high fees. So if you're able to offer
mm-hmm,
ease and low fees, it becomes extremely attractive for people.
mm-hmm,
Also, I think real world assets are going to be huge. I think that's a segment which is going to take uh, growth. You've seen BlackRock announce something in the last week or so.
mm-hmm,
Also, you'll see a lot of people get into this space, and I think that's
mm-hmm,
actually a monetized tokenization of
mm-hmm,
an asset. I think that's going to be really big. So watch out for that particular segment. If you're building around it, I would highly recommend, dig deeper and do something
Mm-hmm.
well on that arena.
Good, 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 good. So yeah, thanks for sharing all the insights around Shardeum, around the community and the initiatives. Do you want to say something to the listeners on behalf of Shardeum or in general? Is there anything that you want like to share?
Sure. I think, Shardeum is more of a casebook for people to see how to build. I think that is something, where we have done it with very, very low cost from our perspective, as well as, we've done it effectively. We haven't done any large parties, as Vijay was just mentioning earlier, which happens during the bull time. We have stayed away from all of that, but we've done it correctly. And I feel that this is a good casebook, a study to learn from.
Mhm.
But also, talking to Vijay, he's also done something incredible. I have watched his journey as well for the last, having met him in the last 2 years
Okay.
plus. That Since is in Austin, that was the first time. No, actually, we met in New York NFT.
Yeah, okay. NFT NYC 2022.
Correct. So I've watched him and I've seen him grow with leaps and bounds, and he's done extremely well for himself. So these are all playbooks by which you can learn from and you can build on. And the critical thing is build first and then have a party. I think that's
Yep.
extremely.
Rightly pointed out, and when the bull is coming, this is a much needed info, much needed boost to the founders who are listening, right? Because a lot of founders get distracted easily after getting fancy funding rounds or doing fancy funding rounds, and that's a timely advice. So thanks a lot, Shashad. And just before we wrap up, we used to have a little rapid fire round, so I won't take up a lot of time, maybe three or four questions, and then we call it quits. So, what's your favorite city? I mean, you shouldn't tell Dallas. That's out of the equation. So, other than Dallas, what's your favorite city and why?
So, thankfully, I've had the privilege of traveling quite a bit. One of the cities which always comes to mind whenever I talk about is Lucerne in Switzerland. I think that's a city I
Yeah.
love. There's also Hyderabad where I was born, and will always remain, very dear to me. So,
Okay. Okay. Cool. Yeah, Lausanne is one of the beautiful cities that you can come across. I live in Munich, which is what, 3.5, 4 hours from there, from here. Cool. Okay. And what's your favorite hobby? Do you have a favorite hobby or a physical activity that you would like to share to the audience?
my hobby is music. I do listen to a lot of music,
Oh,
and that's a
nice.
combination of whether it is classical or contemporary or jazz or ghazals or Indian music.
Nice.
It's a combination of
Mm,
everything. I mean, I like music per se, so that's
mm,
something I spend,
okay.
whatever little time I have. It's also way to relax. So
Cool. That's great to know. And who is your biggest inspiration outside the Web3 space?
that's a good question. I typically have always found people who perceive and win to be my role models, and one of the names which comes to mind is somebody like J.K. Rowling.
Oh,
She fought, adversity. She fought rejection. She fought marriage and a divorce. She fought death of family, and she actually built an idea which became, literally people have lived through. I mean, the Harry Potter series was something. Not only was it a book art of, I mean, it's a book of fiction which became an art, literally, but
mhm.
she also brought reading back to the schools, and I give her credit for that because at that particular time, America was struggling with reading, and the series of 7 books literally got people back to libraries. So I think definite credit goes to her for that as well. But the will to succeed was just phenomenal.
Phenomenal. Yep. Yep. Absolutely. So one last question. So if not Web3, if you could choose any other career, what would be and why?
I'm revealing a lot here, but I would have loved to be a doctor. I mean,
Ah,
that
okay.
was something which I'm still passionate about. I mean, it's not just the fact that you're curing human misery, but it's also the fact that you can give so much back to the community. I think
Yes.
that is, something I would have cherished to do.
That's a wonderful podcast, Mr. Shashad. I'm really glad to have you here. And then Bitscrunch, Team Bitscrunch is in fact very happy and glad to have you. So keep building, keep pushing, and keep nurturing young talents and let them build on top of Shardeum quite soon.
Thank you very much, Vijay. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me, and definitely would like to see your growth as well. And looking forward to building and growing together. Thanks again.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.